The Galactic Council has spoken, and Earth's future hangs in the balance. Humanity faces an ultimatum: submit to the Council's demands or face annihilation. But Earth is no stranger to defiance. This time, humanity won't bow. We will fight back. The war for Earth's survival has begun. Will humanity rise to the challenge, or will it be crushed beneath the weight of the galaxy's most powerful empire? This is just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and witness humanity's greatest battle unfold. Join us and stand with Earth, or watch as the galaxy's fate is sealed. The message arrived at Earth's capital like a shockwave, silent but forceful. A formal communication from the Galactic Council, delivered not through the usual channels, but straight to the President's office. No pleasantries, no warnings. Just a single line of text that changed everything. The Galactic Council demands a tribute from Earth. No one in the room moved at first. The President's advisors exchanged glances, their faces a mirror of disbelief. Humanity had heard of the Council, of course. A loose alliance of the galaxy's oldest, most powerful species. Few dared to defy them, and those who did were erased from history, silenced, vanished, their names not even whispered in the dark corners of the universe. The President, a seasoned leader who had dealt with countless interstellar negotiations, was no stranger to the weight of galactic politics. But this was different. The Council had never directly contacted Earth before. Humanity had never been asked to pay a tribute, let alone the kind of tribute the message implied. "Is this real?" the President asked, his voice hoarse. "Can we verify the sender?" The Chief of Security, a sharp-eyed woman named General Kira Ward, stepped forward. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, working furiously to trace the message's origin. After a long moment, she gave a curt nod. "It's authentic," she confirmed. "They're giving us no choice." The Council's message was clear, its tone icy and demanding. Earth's place in the galaxy had always been in the periphery. Humans were seen as an unruly, unpredictable species that somehow managed to survive in the harshest corners of the galaxy. But they had never been considered a true threat, nor had they ever been asked to contribute in any significant way to the galactic order. Now, everything was about to change. "They want tribute, but what does that even mean?" a young aide asked, still trying to make sense of the message. "It means exactly what it says," General Ward replied coldly. "They want something from us, something valuable. And if we don't give it to them, we'll be punished." The room fell silent as that reality sank in. The Council wasn't asking for aid, for resources, or for trade. They were demanding. But the question still lingered. Why? Earth had barely made its mark on the galactic stage. Sure, humanity had developed impressive technology and had its share of powerful warships, but compared to the ancient races of the Galactic Council, humans were mere children. Why would they demand tribute from a species so young, so untested? "What do we do?" the President asked, eyes narrowing. "We can't just ignore them." "We could," General Ward replied. "But the last time a civilization ignored a request like this, they ceased to exist." It was a sobering thought. The Galactic Council had wiped out entire planets in the past, leaving no trace of those who resisted them. Their methods were efficient, brutal, and absolute. Resistance was futile. That much was clear. But the question remained. What could Earth offer to avoid the wrath of the Council? The President turned to his most trusted diplomat, a man who had navigated delicate peace talks with some of the galaxy's most dangerous species. "Ambassador Caleb, what's your take on this?" Caleb knew exactly what they were up against. A seasoned negotiator, he had faced down alien warlords, powerful trade cartels, and factions with motives far less clear than the Galactic Council's. But this was unprecedented. "I believe they're testing us," Caleb said slowly. "They want to see if we'll kneel, if we'll comply without a fight. The tribute? That's just a pretext. They want to know if humanity has the will to survive in this galaxy." A ripple of tension swept through the room. The weight of Caleb's words hit harder than any weapon. Humanity's place in the universe was on the line. "We won't bend," the President declared, his voice firm. We'll make them see that humanity isn't a species that can be dictated to. And how do you propose we do that? General Ward asked, her voice laced with skepticism. The president's eyes flicked to Caleb. You're the expert. What options do we have? For a long moment, Caleb didn't speak. His mind raced, considering every angle. The council had always been about control, about maintaining dominance. The tribute wasn't about wealth or resources. It was about forcing Earth into submission. They wouldn't settle for anything less. But there had to be a way to turn the tables. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. We don't offer them tribute. We give them something else. The room leaned in, hanging on his every word. What? The president asked. Prisoners, Caleb said. We give them prisoners, alien criminals who've defied galactic law. We'll offer them the greatest of trophies, enemies of their own kind, captured and delivered on Earth's terms. A stunned silence followed. The idea was bold, even reckless. But for the first time since the message had arrived, Caleb saw a glimmer of hope in the president's eyes. It was the only move they had left, and it might just work. As Caleb stepped onto the bridge of the diplomat ship, the weight of humanity's future pressed heavily against him. The stars beyond the observation windows shimmered in their distant majesty, but they held no comfort. No one could predict what would happen next, and yet he was the one who had to make the first move. The Galactic Council's headquarters was everything humanity had imagined. An enormous station, floating like a jewel among the stars. Its sleek, monolithic design reflected the ancient power of the civilizations it housed. Caleb had been prepared for grandeur, but the sheer scale of it was overwhelming. Yet, as the diplomat representative of Earth, he couldn't afford to be intimidated. The council was old, and it would be tempting to think they were invincible. But their arrogance might be their undoing. He stood at the center of the main chamber, surrounded by the representatives of the council, towering beings from species older than Earth itself. The leader's lawn was a creature of impossible proportions. Its form shifted with light and shadow, making it look more like a living sculpture than an alien life form. Zlana's species had seen empires rise and fall, watched countless civilizations come and go, and now Earth had been dragged into their web. You must be the human diplomat. Zlana's voice resonated in the room, deep and commanding. You stand before the might of the Galactic Council, and you dare to offer prisoners in place of tribute? You understand the gravity of this decision, don't you? Caleb's gaze locked with the alien leader. The gaze was cold, probing, but there was something else, a flicker of curiosity. Zlan had not expected this. That much was clear. Your demand for tribute was clear, Caleb began, his voice steady, but his heart raced. But your history suggests tribute isn't what you truly seek. It's control you want, not resources. I'm here to offer something that challenges that assumption. The silence in the room was deafening. The council members exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. The human had spoken, but would his words hold weight, or would they be dismissed as an insolent challenge? What are you suggesting, human? Zlana's tone softened slightly, though the coldness still hung in the air. We will not bow to you, Caleb said with unwavering confidence. Instead, we offer you something far more valuable, captured criminals. The most dangerous, most notorious individuals who have broken galactic laws and defied the very rules you uphold. Consider them a gift from humanity. Prisoners, you have no choice but to accept. The words hung in the air like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown before the council. Caleb could see the flicker of surprise in some of their eyes, a brief moment where their ancient composure cracked. But it was quickly hidden, replaced by skepticism. You think we will accept this? A voice cut through the tension. It was one of the other representatives, a creature with multiple limbs and a face that seemed to be perpetually set in an expression of annoyance. Your species has no concept of real power. How do you expect us to view prisoners, criminals who have no relevance to our order, as a gift? Caleb stood tall, matching the creature's gaze. You have a long history of controlling systems and species who were once rebellious. You've wiped out entire civilizations for less than what I'm offering. But there's one thing you haven't considered. We're not afraid of you, star. You think we'll cower before your threats, but we're not a species that falls easily. And these criminals. He gestured to the holographic display, where images of notorious galactic criminals flickered into view. They've committed atrocities against every one of your precious laws. I'm giving you a chance to right the wrongs you've ignored. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Zlan's expression remained unreadable, but Caleb could see the flickers of uncertainty among the council. This wasn't the response they had been expecting. They were used to planets complying without question, submitting to the demands of the council without protest. Earth, however, was different. Humanity was not going to be bullied. Are you really willing to give up your most dangerous enemies? Zlan finally spoke again, his voice a low growl. Do you understand the implications of what you're offering? Do you know what it means to hand over criminals who are far more dangerous than your kind can comprehend? Caleb didn't flinch. We know exactly what we're doing. These criminals are threats to your power and to ours. We're offering them as a test, a sign that humanity can and will make decisions on its own terms. The council leader tilted its head slightly, as if contemplating the human's words. And if we refuse your offer, then Earth will not submit, and your attempts to force us into submission will fail. We will fight for our sovereignty, and we will not be alone. There are others who see the flaws in your so-called order, and we will ally with them. For a long moment, the room was silent. Caleb knew he had pushed the boundaries, but there was no turning back now. If Earth was to survive in this galaxy, they needed to show strength, and this was their chance. The council was not used to being defied. This could either be their downfall or the start of a war. Finally, Zlan spoke, its voice heavy with the weight of millennia of history. You are a brave species, human. Perhaps too brave for your own good. There was a pause. Your offer is unexpected. We will deliberate. But know this, refusing us will not go unanswered. Caleb nodded once, a subtle acknowledgement of the dangerous path they were about to walk. Then we'll see where your deliberations take us. With that, he turned and walked out of the chamber, the weight of the moment pressing against him. He had played his hand. Now, all he could do was wait and prepare for what would come next. The decision was made. Humanity wasn't going to kneel, and the diplomat had made his move. Now, the clock was ticking. To fulfill the offer he presented, Caleb needed to act quickly. The first prisoner, a warlord notorious across the galaxy, had to be captured, and it had to happen soon. Failure was no longer an option. The operation to capture the first prisoner was nothing short of audacious. The target was Korthak, a vicious warlord from a distant star system. He had defied the Galactic Council for decades, leading raids on Council-aligned colonies and evading every attempt to bring him to justice. If the Council had any lingering doubts about humanity's resolve, Caleb intended to dispel them in one swift, bold stroke. The mission was risky. Korthak's fleet was a well-oiled machine, and he had powerful allies scattered across the galaxy. But Caleb knew there was one thing the warlord didn't expect. Humans were willing to do whatever it took to survive. No alien empire, no matter how ancient or powerful, could predict the lengths to which humanity would go. The plan was simple, but risky. The human military had intercepted a communication indicating that Korthak would be visiting a neutral station near the border of Council space to negotiate with a rival faction. It was their best chance to strike, but it would only take one misstep for the entire operation to fail. Time is running out, Caleb. General Ward's voice crackled through the comms as Caleb paced aboard the strike ship. We've locked onto his coordinates. You've got one shot at this. Understood, Caleb replied, his voice calm despite the pressure building around him. We won't miss. The ship moved silently through space, its stealth capabilities cloaking it from the watchful eyes of Korthak's fleet. Caleb's mind raced as the countdown to their arrival began. This was no longer about diplomacy or negotiations. This was about sending a message to the Galactic Council. If humanity could capture a figure like Korthak, then the Council would have no choice but to take Earth seriously. As the station loomed closer, Caleb's pulse quickened, his heart beat in sync with the ticking clock. The warlord was close, too close, and yet the plan had no room for error. The smallest mistake could set off alarms across the galaxy, and then all of Earth's negotiations would be for nothing. The ship's crew worked in quiet unison, their hands steady despite the stakes. The strike was carefully timed, and the team had trained for months, preparing for this exact moment. The operation was supposed to be clean, a surgical strike, grab Korthak, disable his ship, and return to Earth without a trace. But in deep space, nothing ever went as planned. A sudden burst of static interrupted Caleb's thoughts. "We've been detected," the ship's commander reported, his voice tight. "Korthak's fleet is inbound. We're outnumbered." Caleb's mind raced. The situation was spiraling. There wasn't enough time to abort the mission and get back to safety. They couldn't risk Korthak escaping. The operation had to proceed, now. "Engage at once," Caleb ordered, his voice firm. "We take him or we die trying." In a flurry of action, the ship descended on the neutral station. The chaos was immediate. Korthak's forces were swift to react, launching a barrage of fire in an attempt to force the humans back. But the human strike ship was faster, cutting through the attacks with precision. Caleb watched the scene unfold through the ship's viewport. His stomach clenched, but there was no turning back. The decision had been made. Humanity would no longer hide in the shadows. Korthak's ship came into view, a massive vessel heavily armored, but slow. The strike ship circled around, moving into position. As the countdown ticked to 0, Caleb gave the order. The capture operation began. Within minutes, Korthak's vessel was disabled, its systems scrambled by the human ship's electronic warfare. The warlord himself was quickly apprehended, his resistance nothing more than a fleeting show of arrogance. The deed was done. The first prisoner was in custody. Caleb exhaled deeply. The operation had been successful, but at what cost? As the ship returned to Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council would not simply accept this gift without retaliating. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. They had taken the first step in a dangerous game, and now the Council would have to decide whether to accept their offer or risk provoking a war. As the prisoner was secured and the ship made its way back to Earth, Caleb allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The warlord was only the first. There would be others, more dangerous and more cunning than Korthak. But humanity had taken the first step, and for better or worse, they were now on the Council's radar. This was only the beginning. The first prisoner was in Earth's hands, but now came the true test. As the Galactic Council's fleets loomed ominously at the edge of Earth space, the question wasn't whether humanity could fight. They had already proven that. The real question was, would the Council allow them to survive the consequences of defiance? It was only a matter of hours before Earth's military detected the approach of the Council's fleet. Vast and terrifying, their ships appeared like dark shadows against the backdrop of the stars. The message was clear: submission or annihilation. The human fleet had mobilized quickly in response. Despite Earth's limited resources, the newly upgraded warships, equipped with alien technology captured from past encounters, gave humanity a fighting chance. Caleb stood in the war room, staring at the holographic display of the approaching enemy. His pulse quickened, but his face remained impassive. "We're outgunned," General Ward said, breaking the silence. "Their numbers alone could overwhelm us in minutes, and their ships are far more advanced." Caleb nodded. "We don't have the luxury of numbers, but we have something they don't: the will to fight. We can hold them off, but we need to buy time." Ward's eyes flickered with a mixture of doubt and determination. "And if they don't stop at just buying time, then we'll make them regret it," Caleb replied firmly. As the Council fleet drew nearer, the air in the command center thickened. There was no turning back now. Earth was about to face its greatest challenge, and Caleb knew this would define humanity's place in the galaxy. The human fleet launched into formation, their ships sleek and agile compared to the bulkier alien vessels. The first wave of Council ships arrived in Earth's orbit, their weapons primed and ready. The message was delivered without words. The Council would not tolerate humanity's insolence any longer. The battle began with a deafening burst of fire. The human ships, though technologically advanced, were not a match for the Council's overwhelming firepower. But Caleb knew it was never about winning in the conventional sense. This was a trial of strength, one that would test humanity's resolve, not just its firepower. As the human ships dodged the barrage, launching counterattacks, Caleb's strategy became clear. The Council had the numbers, but humanity had ingenuity. He had already ordered a series of tactical maneuvers that would force the Council's fleet into a tight formation, making them vulnerable to Earth's most potent weapons. But first, they had to hold their ground. The enemy was relentless. Each moment of peace was shattered by another wave of laser fire, followed by explosions that lit up the void. But the human fleet moved with precision. Every maneuver was calculated, every shot fired with purpose. The Council may have underestimated humanity's capacity for war, but the humans had learned quickly, adapting to the alien tactics with frightening speed. "We've got them on the back foot," General Ward reported, her voice tight with tension. "Our ships are holding their ground." Caleb's eyes never left the holographic display. The battle wasn't just about fighting. It was about sending a message. Earth wouldn't cower, not to the Council, not to anyone. With each passing second, the Council's confidence seemed to falter, their massive warships slowing, re-evaluating the threat they faced. But then, a new transmission interrupted Caleb's thoughts, and the ground beneath him seemed to shift. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. It was Zlan, the leader of the Galactic Council. "Humanity has proven its strength in battle. But strength alone will not save you." The hologram of Zlan's image flickered into view, towering over Caleb. Its voice was colder than ever. "We will not allow this insolence to go unpunished. You have made your point, but now we will make ours. Surrender now, and your planet may be spared. Continue this defiance, and we will erase you from the galaxy." Caleb stood firm, his expression unwavering. "You underestimate us, Zlan. We've already proven we won't surrender." A tense silence followed. Zlan's figure disappeared from the hologram, but the battle continued. The Council ships began to position themselves for a final, overwhelming assault. In the midst of the chaos, Caleb saw an opportunity, a gap in the enemy's formation. If he could exploit it, he might just turn the tide. But it was a dangerous maneuver. There was no guarantee that his fleet could hold long enough for the strike to land. "Prepare the breach," Caleb ordered, his voice calm but resolute. The human ships, battered but determined, closed in on the Council's weak point. The Council ships, perhaps thinking they had already won, were too focused on overwhelming the human fleet to notice the subtle shift in their tactics. Then, as if on cue, the human fleet unleashed its most devastating weapon, an experimental missile, derived from the alien technology they had previously acquired. The missile tore through the enemy's defenses with stunning precision, creating a massive gap in their formation. The tide of the battle shifted. For a fleeting moment, the Council's ships faltered, regrouping and reassessing the situation. The human fleet pressed on, attacking with renewed vigor. The gamble had paid off. "We've done it," General Ward said, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. "They're retreating." But Caleb didn't celebrate. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Council would not forget this humiliation. Their response would come, and it would be swift. The price of humanity's defiance had yet to be fully realized. "We've proven we can fight," Caleb muttered to himself. But the real challenge is yet to come. The trial of strength had only just begun. The victory at Earth's orbit was fleeting. The Council had retreated, but Caleb knew the war was far from over. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about survival. And survival in the face of the Galactic Council meant one thing. Nothing was sacred. Humanity was no longer just a player in galactic politics. Now, they were the enemy. The aftermath of the battle left Earth's fleet in a tenuous position. The enemy had retreated, but not defeated. The Council, its pride wounded, would not allow this insolence to go unpunished. Their defeat was a mere setback, a challenge to their authority that they would soon take very personally. Caleb watched as the holographic map of the galaxy updated, showing the massive council fleets moving into position, preparing for an all-out assault on Earth. "We've barely scratched the surface," General Ward muttered, her voice heavy with the weight of what was coming. "They're regrouping. When they return, it won't be with a fleet of warships. It'll be an armada." Caleb stood, arms crossed, staring at the display. "We don't have time for regret. We've provoked them, and they will retaliate. But if we run, we'll lose everything. This is our fight now." The room was silent as the implications of his words settled in. Earth wasn't just defending itself anymore, it was taking a stand. The Council's retribution was inevitable, but humanity would no longer stand idly by. The first sign of the Council's return came in the form of a shockwave, a ripple in space that signaled their ships were coming, fast and furious. Intelligence had reported a massive armada, an entire fleet of warships, dreadnoughts, and carriers, racing toward Earth's coordinates. Humanity had been given a brief window to prepare, but that window was closing. "Get ready," Caleb said, turning toward the strategists and military personnel. "We've seen their tactics. We know how they fight. This time, we don't make the same mistake twice." But even with their technological advantage, Earth's fleet was vastly outnumbered. The Council had spent millennia perfecting their ships, their weaponry, and their strategies. Humanity, on the other hand, had only begun to scratch the surface of galactic warfare. It wasn't enough to have superior tactics or technology. It would take something more. The fleet gathered in Earth's orbit, their ships now arrayed in defensive positions. Every available vessel was mobilized, from Earth's largest warships to smaller, faster vessels, each carrying the weight of humanity's future. The Council would soon be upon them, and Caleb knew this would be their ultimate test. "We can't win this fight by matching them blow for blow," Caleb said, his voice calm, but edged with the urgency of the moment. "We need to hit them where it hurts, disrupt their command, cripple their supply lines, and break their confidence. We'll hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't stop until they know we won't bow." General Ward nodded, her face grim. "And if they don't break, then we adapt. We learn. And we keep fighting," Caleb said. The first wave of Council ships arrived without warning, their firepower lighting up the dark expanse of space. The initial barrage slammed into Earth's defensive perimeter, overwhelming the first line of defense with a series of devastating explosions. The human fleet responded in kind, firing back with everything they had. The battle had begun in earnest, and it was brutal. But this time, humanity wasn't just reacting. They were proactive, executing the strategies Caleb had devised, targeting weak points in the Council's formation. The first strike was successful. A massive alien dreadnought was disabled, its engines crippled by a well-placed missile strike. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the Council's forces were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. "Caleb, we need a new plan," General Ward called over the comms. "Their reinforcements are pouring in. We can't hold them off forever." Caleb's mind raced. They had done everything right, yet it wasn't enough. The Council's ships were relentless, and their reinforcements kept coming. Humanity was holding its ground, but barely. They couldn't keep this up for much longer. "Give me a moment," Caleb said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. He focused, pushing aside the noise of the battle. There had to be a way out of this, a way to turn the tide in humanity's favor. He looked at the holographic map of the battlefield once more. There it was, an opening, a weak point in the Council's command structure. The fleet was divided, its forces spread thin, attempting to cover all sectors at once. If they could exploit this vulnerability, they might be able to destabilize the Council's offensive. "All ships, focus fire on this sector," Caleb ordered, marking the weak point on the map. "We hit them here, and we do it fast. This is our chance." The fleet responded instantly, shifting its firepower to target the Council's vulnerable flank. As the first few shots hit, it was like the first cracks in a dam. The enemy fleet began to falter, their formation breaking under the pressure. For the first time, the Council's confidence was shaken. "This is it," Caleb whispered to himself. "This is how we win." But as the tide shifted in humanity's favor, Caleb knew this victory was only temporary. The Council would regroup. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had shown that it could stand up to the galaxy's greatest powers. And in the process, it had forced the Council to reconsider its view of Earth. The tide of war had shifted, but the battle was only beginning. The battle for Earth was far from over, but as the Council's fleets began to retreat once more, Caleb knew something had shifted. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore, they were winning. And that in itself was a victory the Council would never forget. The Council's retreat was a victory, but it felt more like a warning. Their fleets had been battered, their pride shattered. For the first time in millennia, Earth had not only resisted their demands, it had struck back with unimaginable force. But Caleb knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The real battle, the one for humanity's future, was just beginning. The human fleet, battered and broken but still standing, watched as the Council ships pulled back. The empty void felt heavier than before. Earth had survived, but at what cost? "We did it," General Ward said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We actually did it." Caleb didn't respond immediately. His eyes were fixed on the tactical map. The Council had retreated, but they would return. The question wasn't if, but when. And when they did, Earth would need to be ready. "We didn't win," Caleb finally said, his tone flat. "Not yet." Ward turned sharply to face him. "What do you mean?" "They're pulling back." "We held our ground." "We survived," Caleb corrected. "But the Council won't stop until they've broken us. They'll come back with a vengeance, and we need to be ready for it." As the minutes ticked by, Caleb's mind raced. He could see the next move before it even happened. A counterattack, stronger than anything they had seen before. The Council's pride had been wounded, and they would come for Earth again, with everything they had. "I know you're tired," Caleb said, addressing the crew and the military personnel. "I know you're all worn down, but now is when it counts." The Council doesn't forget insults. They'll regroup, reassess, and come back with everything in their arsenal. We need to take this fight to them. Ward met his gaze, eyes narrowed. "You're talking about striking first?" Caleb's eyes glinted with determination. "If they want to erase Earth, we make them pay for every inch. It's time to take the war to their doorstep." The room fell silent. The idea of striking before the Council could mount another assault was dangerous. But there was no denying it. It was their only chance. If humanity could hit them hard enough, fast enough, it might just buy enough time to turn the tide of the war for good. "Do it," Ward said, her voice steady. "We'll follow you." It was a gamble, and it would take everything they had. Caleb's strategy was clear. They would target the Council's core worlds, the very heart of their power. The hope was simple. By crippling their leadership, they could destabilize the entire empire. If Earth could take out key military installations, the Council might fracture, forcing them to retreat in disarray. The human fleet, now battle-hardened and united in purpose, set its course. They weren't just heading into unknown space. They were heading into the lion's den, straight into the heart of the Council's domain. There was no going back. As the ships moved through the stars, the magnitude of the mission hit Caleb. He had no illusions about what lay ahead. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they were fighting with something the Council could never understand. Resolve. Human resolve. And that was the key. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," Caleb muttered to himself, his eyes set on the path ahead. "And when we do, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge that Earth isn't something they can just wipe away." The journey was long, the tension unbearable. Every moment that passed, Caleb knew that their fate was balancing on a knife's edge. A single misstep would lead to destruction. When they finally arrived at the first of the Council's core worlds, they didn't hesitate. The human fleet struck with precision, launching a series of targeted attacks on their primary military hubs, crippling their command structures. The Council responded immediately, but the damage had been done. Their forces, scattered and disorganized, were left reeling. For the first time, humanity had done the unthinkable. They had taken the war to the Council and forced them to retreat. Caleb exhaled, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. The Council had been shaken. Earth had shown it could fight, and fight effectively. But the war was far from over. They had won a battle, but the war was still in the balance. And Caleb knew the council would return with a fury. The real fight for Earth's future was only just beginning.